The Washington Commanders found their superstar in the 2024 NFL Draft, and now it is time to build a roster around him here in 2025. My name's Tyler, here with my brother Ryan, and we are going to be doing our first ever mock free agency for the Commanders coming up here in a second. Before we do that, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, tackle that bell. While you're at it, leave a like and a comment. Let us know what you want to see the Commanders do this offseason. Ryan, with that being said, here are all the current free agents as of right now, according to Over the Cap. And so we have them in snap percentage order. So most snaps played versus least snaps played. So a lot of key guys up here that played a lot of snaps, but like what are the team's decisions going to be? Bobby Wagner, Jeremy Chin, Benjamin St. Juice, Noah Igbinobi, Zach Ertz,
Big
Dante Fowl.
monogamy.
Okay, I was close. That's not my worst one. If you're a follower of the channel, that's definitely not my worst one. And so then a lot of key receivers here as well who were good role players. And so Ryan, when you look at this list, what are some of the key names overall that you think they're going to have the most discussions around, potentially keeping or not keeping come 2025?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the ones you just kind of named are at the top of the list there, but Olamide Zaccheaus, Diami Brown, Noah Brown, Cornelius Lucas, Cleveland Farrell, like there are some more rotational guys, like Jameson Crowder is down here. Marcus Mariota was a solid backup. I think he didn't have to play, but is a solid backup, and him and Jayden Daniels' relationship seemed to be pretty good. So maybe they talk about bringing him back as well. But yeah, there's a lot of guys I think for them that could potentially be back on this roster. Luckily for them, they do have a ton of cap space. I think before we started this exercise, they were at like 82 million ish
Yes,
in
sir.
cap space, and so I feel like that's going to be something kind of going forward that they're going to be able to make a lot of moves and really solidify this roster around Jayden Daniels in 2025. So with all that being said, let's jump into the free agency calculator here. So I don't. We made one cut, and it was Austin Eckler. They can save $3.5 million. Uh, it's just the NFL is not kind to 30-plus-year-old running backs unless your name is Derrick Henry. And Austin Eckler, while he served
Yeah.
well in his role, I feel like that they could definitely find somebody in the draft that could play that role as the kind of the third down back, be a little bit of a special teams guy. I think kind of RJ Harvey, I think would be really, really interesting just because he is super explosive and he's a good receiver out of the backfield. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of guys in this draft class that they can go. They can save that $3.5 million and maybe invest a little bit earlier in the draft at running back.
Exactly, and then even to well, one worst case scenario, they can always just renegotiate Austin Eckler's contract for even less money if they want to bring him back. But to your point, though, with this running back class, we even kind of debated would they like also potentially even with Brian Robinson Jr. what would they end up doing? And I think he's still their main back, but they will. I highly likely they still go get another back in this upcoming draft to compete for some minutes, and then also a good back that can catch out of the backfield. And as you said, like RJ Harvey is like the first one that's coming to my mind as well. That would be a good landing spot. I think Devin Neal, DJ Giddens, also a lot of these guys, early day three type guys that would provide a lot of really good minutes. There's a couple other names that I have been reading that they potentially could end up cutting just because of the money that would come along with it. But I think that there's some reasons why they wouldn't. First one's going to be Jonathan Allen. One, I think he's still just a veteran player as well. He came back from the torn pec this year and then still played the playoffs and provided some quality minutes. I think you kind of keep that three-headed monster of that defensive line going with Jonathan Allen, Jersey Newton, and Deron Payne going for one more year. And it doesn't stop you from also addressing that defensive tackle position in this draft in general. Like a guy I think I would really like as well. And I say his name a bunch if you follow the channel a lot, but I do think CJ West would be perfect for this type of 3-4 defense that they have going here. Put him in the middle and then put Jersey Newton on the outside, Deron Payne on the other side and really let these guys eat while their outside linebackers and edge rushers can get after the quarterback or maybe even fall back in coverage. You can get a guy like CJ West, let him develop, have him go through this 1 year as well, and before potentially making some other more drastic decisions. Marshawn Lattimore is another guy, but I think really as of right now they just have Mike Sanders on contract. Guys like Benjamin St. Juice is who played a lot of snaps, but potentially might not be back next year because those snaps that they played last year maybe weren't the best quality. And Lattimore, I think, is just going to be a better player. The question is going to be if he stays healthy, but it is $18 million, which is a lot of money. And the
Yeah.
last one too, as well, I've been reading about with Andrew Wiley. I maybe Wiley they can move on from, but with the ACL injury to Sam Cosmi, and this is also going to play into another offensive line guy who we end up re-signing, who's a free agent. But I think you're going to want to have as much cohesiveness on that offensive line as possible because Sam Cosmi's future when he comes back from this injury, or when he comes back from this injury, is still up in the air. Is he going to make it to training camp? Is he going to be on the pup list at the start of the year? Is he going to be able to play in 2025? I'm sure he'll probably be able to do the latter, but just when is going to be that big issue. And he was probably one of the better offensive linemen, I think, for that team until he tore his ACL in the divisional round against the Lions. So that's going to be just some big question marks in there, and maybe I could see these guys being cut. I would see why they would do it just because of the money, but I think their value they
Yeah.
bring is much more. So I say all that though, and let's kind of get into that first guy that we do end up sticking with here. One guy that we think deserves to come back if he wants to come back for another year, run it back one more time. But Bobby Wagner, an amazing story as well, coming over to the Commanders on like kind of a whim, and then re-signing him just to fill out the roster. And he turns out to be probably the best linebacker in the league, according to PFF, third best linebacker in the league. So I think it's absolutely worth bringing him back if the price is right. They have the money for it.
Yeah.
So I think it's worth it.
Yeah, no, I do too. I mean, he was the center point of that defense. He was the green dot. He did such a good job being the veteran in the room, and I feel like Washington would be very silly for them to let him walk. And so
Yeah,
I do feel like they bring him back. Another guy that I felt had a bounce back year was Jeremy Chin. He did a really good job. He gets a nice little contract extension there. He's 27, so I believe we actually did like a 3-year, $21 million extension for him just to come in there and be that box safety. Dan Quinn really likes those box safeties. Think like Keanu Neal with the Falcons, right? Like those big guys that can come down
Cam
and
Chancellor. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Cam Chancellor at Seattle, and so I feel like Jeremy Chin really found a good spot here with Dan Quinn, and Dan Quinn found his guy at this stop in Washington. So I feel like that's another good one. Another guy that earned another 1-year extension, Zach Ertz, probably won't be uber expensive just because he is a 35-year-old tight end, but we'll give him $1 million or $100,000 for each year, each trip around the sun for Zach Ertz there at $3.5 million. Just again, another veteran presence, another veteran receiving target in that room.
each
He
trip
is
around the sun, or do you mean
oh, he's
the moon?
35 years old, so we gave him $100,000 for
Oh,
each
oh,
year.
oh, you mean
Yeah,
for his year? Oh, okay.
yeah,
All
yeah,
right. Never mind. I thought you were talking about just for a single year. Okay, I get it. Never mind.
yeah, yeah. No,
Leave
okay,
leave the dumb jokes to me. You're supposed to be the intellectual one on this show. I
that's
say the dumb jokes.
that's definitely not true.
That's
Uh,
I don't know about that.
well, okay. You do say dumb jokes, but I don't know if that makes me the intellectual one. I wouldn't say the intellectual we're either of us are the intellectual ones. Um, but
We're equilibrium when it comes to that. So I
yeah,
like it.
yeah.
Continue.
Okay. But Zach Ertz, just a veteran receiving target in that room. Jayden Daniels really relied on him, especially at late in the season. He was his go-to third down target, go-to target in key scenarios on game-winning drives and whatnot. So I felt like bringing him back would be somebody that they definitely want to touch on. The last two here, or last three, uh, Dante Fowler led them in sacks last year with 10 and a half. So we gave him $1 million per sack there. And I feel like that makes sense. Top edge rushers are making a little bit more than this. I think they're making around 15 to 20 in the league right now. If not, maybe even a little bit more. And so going and getting a guy, he's only got 1 year. We only signed him to 1 year just because he is 31, and that can be a tough position to play longevity wise. But I feel like that keeps some continuity there on that defensive line, along with keeping Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, Jerza Newton all together as well. De'Ami Brown was a good receiving target and got a lot better as the season went on, and made some big catches in that Detroit game as well. And Cornelius Lucas, um, You mentioned it earlier with the injury to Sam Cosmi. Just bringing him back keep some continuity on that offensive line, keep guys in the room. I think is going to be really important just because it is up in the air when Samuel Cosmi will be back, and then to what capacity will he be able to play at when he comes back.
Yeah, and once again, with all these positions too, as well, is I think they have so much money in the bank as well, and these are still pretty team friendly like type contracts and value overall. Does not stop them from like external free agency addressing getting guys that they like and would want to bring in to come and play for really kind of whatever price. And then at the same time, too, doesn't mean that they would stop them from going in the draft. Just for example, like just because they re-signed Dante Fowler Jr., I does not take edge rusher off the table for them at 29, and there's going to be
Oh
a lot
no.
of guys I think that could kind of fall in that range that would fit their wheelhouse, like a guy maybe like Michael Williams, maybe Donovan Ezerake or Ezeraku, Mike Green, if he would fall down there. I even though I don't think Mike Green is falling outside of the top 15 now. They're just seeing all these current projections. So that's some of the internal ones. Maybe they could go some other routes as well. And so we'll love to hear some input on that. But before now we get into external moves, are sitting at about $50 million, and they could potentially go and do something similar to what they did last year, where it's like go and try and find team friendly veteran value guys that they go slowly build around while they're going through this rebuild. But it's very interesting now because Washington Commanders have now gone from a rebuilding team to now Super Bowl contenders, and they have all this extra money. And Ryan and I, we talked about it. We thought, like, what if they did two extra, like, big splashes? And one, so they did resign De'Ami Brown, a receiver, yes. But to my point, though, does not mean they can't go make a big splash in free agency. So we're looking at some of the guys who are currently free agents, but we thought about a guy who's technically not a free agent yet. But if the Jets were to cut him, I love this Devontae Adams, Terry McLaurin receiving duo, and you pair him up with Jayden Daniels and his running capabilities. Uh, I think that would be an extremely interesting combination. You can get him for significantly cheaper, I think, than what his contract's going to be with the Jets, as like they're cutting him. So I think something like 18 million. Looks like there's way over the cap setup. There's going to be some guaranteed bonus just because he technically hasn't been cut yet from New York.
Yeah.
If so, they do end up cutting him. I really like that addition to that receiving room right there, especially pairing him up with Cliff Kingsbury. I think that would be extremely fascinating to watch. And so, and I think another guy too. So you have Dante Fowler there as well. I think you go and get Super Bowl champ Josh Sweat as well. The Eagles are not going to be able to afford him. You keep him in the division, maybe get some insider information as well about how these defenses run, how the offenses run as well. But you also get a very quality edge rusher that fits your system as well. And he's going to be going anywhere from like 14 million to 18 million. We think he's going to be more around 15 million, but you can get him on a longer term contract. So then post Dante Fowler Jr., you still have one of your premier edge rushers there. And once again, I
Yeah.
still think you can go get an edge rusher to go and a receiver as well to go and try and get some young talent as well that you can go and build and develop.
Yeah, and I think adding last year they kind of took the like build the middle of the roster approach, go be patient, sign the veterans, and like just the sum of its parts are or
The,
sorry, what is it?
the sum of his
Uh
parts are greater than his whole.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I feel like here you can go and really make big splashes because you have that strong middle section of the roster. Like you don't really have any glaring needs at any one spot. Maybe corner. But if you keep Marshawn Lattimore like we did, and Mike Sanders still continues to play the way he did at the end of the season, I feel like that's going to be
No,
an area where if you maybe put your first round pick towards a corner, get Trey Amos, or like invest in like Maxwell Hairston or some of the other guys, Noel Williams in the second and third round. I feel like that would pay dividends here, and that would allow you to go out and make these big splashes here. So you still have a little bit of money to work with. We try to get to around 15 million just to make sure that you have enough money to like sign your draft class to your roster. And so I feel like that'll probably be it for the additions that we make, but there might be some like bottom of the roster exchanges that we see with every team every year. But no, I think that this team would be very formidable against a lot of top contenders in the
Yeah.
NFL making these additions and re-signings.
Yeah, no, it's especially too if you go get a guy like Devontae Adamson as well
Yeah.
and Josh Sweat, just trying to improve that team now to really compete with the Eagles. So it'd be interesting. And total quick sidebar, but going back to our intellectual debate earlier, neither one of us is intellectual because the quote is the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, that's
Not
what
the
it
sum
is.
of its parts
Yeah.
is greater than the whole. So we're both stupid. So I think to settle that debate. So, but back to the Commanders though, they're not stupid. I think they're going to be doing well. They're not stupid anymore, thanks to Dan Snyder not beating there. But I think that uh, it's going to be fun to watch this Commanders team. I hope they don't have a sophomore slump, something similar to what we saw with the Texans. I think the Texans also got bit with the injury bug really bad, but they're in a better cap situation though overall to address their offensive line needs. If that's going to be the route that they end up going. And maybe even too, that's something we didn't address is maybe they go get a guy like Trey Smith. Maybe they really explore with all this cap space, go get Cam Robinson, go get Trey Smith, like Jayden Daniels, like is the gem that the Washington fan space has been waiting for. Really, honestly, since like RG3, like during his like little stint there and how exciting he was to watch. And so you want to protect him at all cost. So maybe they instead of going the receiver route or the edge rusher route, they go like Cam Robinson, Trey Smith, and really bolster up that offensive line financially. So we'll have
Yeah.
to wait and see. But to your point, it's going to be fun to watch what they do come free agency time.
Yeah. So with that all that being said, let's go ahead and wrap things up here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. That is the best way to help out the channel. While you're down there, leave a comment on what you thought of this Commander's mock free agency. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you have done differently? Know that we'll see you guys next time.